Celtics Beat is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, everybody, welcome in. New Celtics Beat here. Adam Kaufman and Valenti, we're always here with you. Brian Barrett from The Ringer rejoins us, good friend of this program, this show, of course, coming at you a couple times a week now. And it's a good thing it is, because we have got some mid-series fun stuff to talk about. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed that we might, on the heels of our last show that I did with Greeny a few days ago, that we would actually have something fun with this team to talk about again after falling behind 3-0, obviously. Now we have maybe a series again. I don't want to get ahead of myself, to believe that we're going to see history here, but we'll dive into all the numbers and specifics and just good stuff. But I think overall, guys, vibes are better, right? I mean, they're not good. Don't get me wrong. They're not good. Like, the team hasn't won anything yet, but the vibes, it's nice to not be sitting here, Brian, doing an off-season show. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, you're not kidding about that. And the other big thing about that game 4 was I still cannot believe it, guys, that we have the Celtics were down 3-0 and A-Rod and Derek Jeter were both in the building. Yeah. That was incredible to me. That was awesome. When they showed Jeter first, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, he used to be a part owner of the Marlins, so he's just hanging out. Okay, that makes sense. And then they're like, okay, let's pan over to A-Rod, who's with his star player, Anthony Edwards. I'm like, this is incredible. There's no way that they're actually both in the building when a team is trying to come back from a 3-0 deficit. And then TNT is like, well, the last time a team came back from 3-0 was the Red Sox. This is fantastic. So
not even just that. Like, I'll do you one better. Like, that came, of course, right after earlier in the day, Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown are both like, don't let us win one. Don't let us, going all Marcus Millar and Jaylen Millar, and then those two, like you said, sitting courtside at this game. We can convince ourselves, right, as just overzealous, narrow-minded, delusional Boston fans. Fate. It's fate. I have to believe it.
Yeah, and the other component to that is I hope that on Game 5 we see Kevin Millar, David Ortiz. I don't know if you can get Pedro and David Ortiz, but how cool would that be if some of the guys from the 04 team were in the building? Why not, man? That would be electric. I love when the teams have the other teams in town, like at the game. Obviously, this current group of Red Sox won't be there because they're on the West Coast, but I would expect Edelman's going to be in the building, right? He's still a big Boston guy. He was so mad. He always posts videos about when he's upset about what's going on with the Celtics. I would expect that Belichick is going to be in the building. He's already been at a couple of games. So why not get the 04 Red Sox? Can you imagine when they show Millar and Ortiz and Pedro, like if they're in a suite together, what the reaction would be? That would be awesome. Let's go. Get them in the building. Come on, Wick. Let's go.
Is Dave Roberts around? Is he available? It's true, though. Like that.
I think the Dodgers have an off day tomorrow. Somebody already threw this out there. Like I saw it on Twitter. I didn't corroborate any of it. I didn't look it up to see if it was accurate. I just took it for fact, which never has gotten anybody in trouble. But it was one of these things. Somebody was like, hey, for the record, Dave Roberts has an off day tomorrow. And I'm just, again, the wheels are spinning. How many guys could you pack into the TD Garden? Like, is Mike Timlin and Alan Embry, are they hanging around? Like,
we know Wakefield's around. Like, we know
he's not doing anything. Let's get everybody.
Yeah, we know some of the. It's basically, you know what it is? It's a better version of when the team brought in Drew Bledsoe during the whole, Terry Rozier, Eric Bledsoe thing. Yeah, this would be more fun. Maybe if the Celtics come out for warm-ups pregame wearing the old black T-shirt with the red Boston style writing, it says "Why not us?" that the Red Sox players wore in 2004. That's what we could do. At the very least, if Millar isn't there, you got to think there's a message on the video board.
Yeah, and there's got to be a highlight, right? Like Dave Roberts stealing second and Ortiz walk off, the bloody sock, like something along those lines. The one thing that I would encourage the Celtics players not to do that the Red Sox players did: no shots before the game. Okay, this is basketball. This is not Major League Baseball. Okay, you're gonna have an issue running up and down the court if you're taking shots before the game. So I mean, the one thing I would not encourage them to do that the 2004 Red Sox did.
Is this the only way for Damon to come back in town and get a round of applause?
He's already been back and gotten a round of applause. The whole like Jesus Judas thing, that's in the past. People are over the Yankees thing.
Are we? I don't know if I am.
I mean, I'm not saying you are, Barrett is, or even that I am, but I on the whole, Jason, he's still welcome back with open arms, I think, when he shows up at Fenway. Not we're softer as a fan base. I'm sure that's something you've talked about on your podcast.
Yeah, definitely softer the past couple of weeks. The reaction to the Celtics losing the first three and the Bruins. I think the fan base is rabid right now. And look, they held it off for a couple of days here. Celtics have an opportunity, Game 5, to get back in this series. And I know, like, it's cliche to go by what they were saying. Hey, don't let us win one. But you win Game 5 at home. And right now, you look at this situation, not to pivot completely to the series, but Gabe Vincent is now hobbled. This Heat team is dealing with a ton of injuries right now. Obviously, we know that Tyler Hero's not playing, and man, whatever that guy's wearing on the sidelines is just, I don't know what's going on. Valenti, you're a big style guy. You got to talk to him. Like, I don't know what's going on with that guy. But if Vincent's banged up tomorrow, I mean, how many healthy bodies are they going to have, right? I mean, you think about it. The Celtics already had the health advantage entering the series, and now with Vincent banged up, they're dealing. And look, this is a huge thing that the Celtics are trying to overcome, the 3-0 deficit and all that. I totally understand that. But if you're just looking at this, the Celtics right now are what? 9-point favorites on FanDuel to win this game, or 8.5 right now, which I understand, right? Because the Celtics, they win blowouts. So if you're going to bet the game, you might as well take the number, because they're either going to win by like 15 or they're going to lose a close game, right?
So a couple things on that, and it's in line with, like, Vegas has either immense overvalue level respect for the Celtics, or just completely does not respect the Heat, or it's somewhere in between, whatever the case. But as we know, like, the Celtics going into the series were opened as 5-1 favorites, closed as close to 6-1 favorites against a Heat team that, granted, no Giannis for much of that series, but knocked off the number 1 seed, had relative easy work of the Knicks, whereas obviously the Celtics had trouble with the Hawks to some degree, did have trouble with the Sixers, had to come back from down 3-2, went to 7 games with Jimmy Butler and the Heat last year. It was nuts to me, and we talked about it on this show, Evan. It was nuts to me how people were betting and odds makers were lining up this series. But just to feed into how that's still the case, even when the Celtics dropped the first 2 games at home and had to win 4 out of 5 with 3 of those games happening on the road in Miami, the odds were still basically even money that the Celtics would come back and win. When they fell behind 3-0, I was talking to a buddy last night who I had on my radio show who said, it's not so much that I thought it would happen. We're talking about history here, but the number was too good to pass up. It was plus 800 for the Celtics to come back and win the series. So he threw some money on it. But what was notable was after they won Game 3, it jumped to plus 220. Think about that. Plus 220 for the Celtics to win the next 3 games and the Heat not get one, to do something that has never been done in NBA history. The disrespect for the Heat, Barrett, is unbelievable to me. Even though Boston is a much more talented, much deeper, much more well-rounded team, we've seen that for effectively what? In grand totality through 4 games, maybe the equivalent of a little less than 1 full game, 4 quarters over the course of, or because I don't want to feed into the whole like 1-3 out of 4 quarters in game 1. But even if we do that, let's say that 1.5 quarters out of 4 games, they have truly been the better team. It's nuts to me.
Yeah, well, and it's not only just like the odds of it, like coming back from a 3-0 hole, but also think about this Celtics team where we've talked about all season long how they've been so reliant on the 3-point shot. And if you look at the first 3 games of the series, the Heat outscored them by 39 points from 3-point territory. And then last night, that advantage went to the Celtics, where it was a plus 33. But we've seen these games throughout the postseason where the Celtics do struggle from 3-point territory. And we've seen when the Celtics don't hit their threes, they don't hit 40%. They're a below 500 team this season, right? They struggle when it comes to that. So there's the 3-point thing that the Celtics are so reliant on. And the other component to why that number is so staggering is you're betting that Jimmy Butler, like the odds for Jimmy Butler to lose 4 consecutive games, and Eric Spoelstra, and I know Joe Mazzulla has come on under a lot of criticism. That's where I'm not trying to criticize Joe Mazzulla when it comes to this point I'm going to make. But this is widely regarded as the best coach in the NBA, going up against a guy that's in his rookie season with a 3-0 advantage. And now a 3-1 advantage to the point. But still, like, beating Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra 3 consecutive times, for the odds to flip that dramatically after they won 1 game and they still have to win 3 more, it's remarkable. And the other component, and I know I keep going on, but the other component is we've learned like it's very difficult to trust the Celtics. It's very like they will lay an egg. We've seen it throughout the postseason where it's like, where is the intensity on the defensive end? And that's the most aggravating part to me about this team, is because we've seen it in all these elimination games. Their defensive rating has been better than the best defense in the league. But we also know they've had 8 games in this postseason where the defensive rating has been north of 120, which is the worst team in the league. The worst team in NBA history defensively was the Spurs this year at 119.6. 8 times. The Boston Celtics have been worse than the worst defense in NBA history. They were over 120 once the entire postseason last year. So by all those things that I mentioned there, and I know I just went on for a second there, that it's amazing to me that there is so much favoritism towards the Celtics and lack of respect to the Miami Heat.
Well, so I think part of it is this, like, and Ev, I sent you this. I don't know if you had the chance to read it, but I tweeted it out. If Barrett, you didn't see it, we're all numbers guys. And I think that you, the analytical person that you are, Brian, I think you will appreciate this, because I have just, I listen to these broadcasts like everybody else, and I've been increasingly ticked off listening to the whole, with the Lakers lost to the Nuggets, it's 0-150, right? It's 0-150 in NBA playoff history that a team has come back from down 0-3 to win. It's never happened, which is why, like you alluded to before, people keep, hearkening back to 0-4 and the Red Sox doing against the Yankees, when, of course, at that point in time, it had never been done in MLB history. So, and the Bruins were on the wrong side of that in the NHL against Philadelphia years back, a decade and change ago. So people want to obviously give you the lifetime numbers, but where the 0-150 is completely meaningless. And this is what I tweeted out, and credit to our guy Seth Landman, who helped me do a little bit of the research, because I am basketball reference dumb. He helped guide me through. So 0-150 in a best of 7 after falling behind 3-0. We all know it. Everybody recites it. However, when the NBA expanded to 16 teams in 1984, I think that becomes slightly more relevant, because then we're not talking about things that were, fewer games and teams and all of that. So going to 16 teams in 1984 also related a 2-2-1-1-1 playoff format. So not the 2-3-2, 2-2-1-1-1. Then you go from 0-150 down to 0-111. So we're narrowing the gap. However, we keep going. Celtics, of course, dropped the first 2 games at home. So in the case where the format is, again, 2-2-1-1-1, and it goes home, home, away, away, home, away, home, meaning the higher seed fell behind. Very, very rare, obviously. 0-13. Okay, so generally, like when a bad team falls behind 3-0, they're probably going to lose. The higher seed, it very rarely happens. It's happened 13 times, 0-13, coming into this series that we are in right now. Only one of those teams that are in the exact same situation as the Celtics, meaning home, home, away, away, home, only one of those teams even reached a game 6, and that was Orlando against Boston in 2010. Boston was the higher seed, won the first 3. Orlando took the next 2. Celtics won in game 6, put it away. That is the only time we have even seen a game 6. And as Seth quote tweeted me and pointed out, of the 14 times, because of course this that we are living is the 14th time, the 14th time where the higher seed went down 3-0, only 4 times did the higher seed even manage to win game 4. Like the Celtics just did. So, yes, we are in uncharted territory, and yes, this is an uphill battle, but 0-13 is a hell of a lot different than 0-150. When you're talking about a vastly better team, which I do believe, I don't think, I agree, like the Celtics are unpredictable. There's a real Jekyll and Hyde component to them, but I also, I can't sit here and say that I would be utterly shocked just looking at team to team to team. Like, for as long as this series goes, the Celtics will be favored at this point going forward, without a doubt. They will be the favored team. They've only been the underdog once in this series, and that was by 1.5 points in game 4 in Miami. They will be the favored team the rest of the way. I cannot sit here and tell you I will be shocked if they come back and win, just based on the fact that they are clearly, larger regular season and beyond sample size, the better team. And like you said, they've got the health advantage as well.
Well, and now I'm feeling good about this, because now we go from 0-150 to a much smaller number. So I'm feeling much more optimistic after you did that, Kaufman. I need a copy of that, by the way. If you can send me that.
It's in my tweet. It's right there, buddy.
All right,
right there for you.
I gotta copy that onto my Google Doc for the next time I do a pod, and I'll give you credit for it, of course, because
Thank you.
That is a great number. But the other component to that is, I wonder how many times this has happened where the team with the best net rating in the NBA was down 3-0 against a team that had a negative point differential during the regular season.
Probably never happened.
Yes, the Heat had a negative point differential. They lost to the Atlanta Hawks, and they almost lost to the Chicago Bulls. And then Jimmy Butler caught fire against the Bucks, and Giannis goes down, and then they beat the Knicks, and they deserve to win that series. But I just can't get over the fact that this team that has not been a good three-point shooting team all season long, all their guys were shooting the lights out through the first couple of games of the series. And if you look at it on the other side with the Celtics, they couldn't hit anything until game 4. Especially the only guy that was hitting threes was Derrick White, who has had 3 threes in each of these games. He's the only guy. Grant hit 4. Al Horford finally got going. And if you just look at sort of the expected effective field goal percentage, the Celtics had the better expected effective field goal percentage in the first 3 games. And I'm not saying, oh, it's all luck, because part of this is defense too. Like, they're giving up too many easy opportunities to Miami. But I think we can all agree that the way that the Heat were shooting the ball through the first 3 games, especially Gabe Vincent, and I know PR is not the be all end all, who had a PER of 11 this season, or excuse me, Caleb Martin had a PER of 11. He's going off. Gabe Vincent's going off. Max Strus was out of the rotation at times. Duncan Robinson was out of the rotation at times. All these guys were just completely going off throughout this series. And it did feel like it normalized a little bit last night. Now, I don't expect the gap in terms of the 3-point difference to be as wide as it was in that game 4. But one of the things that is going to irritate us as people that want the Celtics to win is if they do lose one of these games, it's going to be because, hey, Jimmy went off, right? Jimmy went nuts. And the problem for the Celtics is they've created this, basically the margin of error is non-existent because they couldn't pull out one of those first 2 games in Boston, especially the game 2-1, guys. That was just so aggravating. So now they almost have to be perfect. But from a Celtics perspective as well, they are really good when they face elimination. It's whatever it is, it seems like it brings the best out of them, especially the best player on the team, which you have to feel good about that. And I thought they did, not to get into the specifics too much, I thought they did a really good job last night, finally getting Butler off Tatum more often than not, because throughout this year, like, that's not the matchup. Jimmy Butler is an elite defender, and Jason Tatum's a great offensive player. But when you can take advantages and go after Strus and go after Martin and go after Vincent, you should, just like on the other side. Jimmy Butler doesn't want Tatum on him. He's going after a smaller guy in Derrick White, all NBA defender and all that, but he's going at bigs like Robert Williams. He's going after Grant Williams. This is stuff the Celtics weren't doing as much in the first 3 games, and I feel like they found that, at least getting Tatum easier opportunities, because they need him to do that based on the way that Jalen has been really bad in this series. And Brogdon, like, those are the 2 other guys in this team that can reliably create their own shot, right? Like, White can hit shots. He can drive a little bit. Smart, more of a passer. Hopefully he can continue to hit the open threes like he did in game 4. But those are the 2 other guys that can create their own shot. And they've had really bad series. So you're going to need everything from Tatum.
Yeah. I mean,
I've take it. I've been talking enough.
No, it's for me, it's like, as we both said it, the Miami, like, the amount of shots Miami was hitting between games 1 and 3 was just completely aggravating, because, and this is the one thing that I've been talking, like, just people that I just know that are Celtics fans, we just talk about this constantly. It's like Miami, for me, the thing that kills me is, like, Miami was, I believe, Barrett, you might know better than I do. I believe Miami was like 27th in offensive rating in the regular season.
Yeah, bad offense.
They were an awful offense. They were bottom of the league offense. And right now, like, again, after game 3, it's like this team can't miss. And, like, I just don't understand, like, what is this? Like, can we learn anything about this? Is the regular season just not mean a single thing anymore? Like, I know that Miami has been a good defensive team all year. That's not surprising. This offensive outburst of just every guy off the bench is just a walking flamethrower is just, and then combine that with the Al Horford hadn't made anything. Malcolm Brogdon was like, 1 for 11 the other night. It's like the Boston Celtics 2 best 3-point shooters, 2 guys that were like 2nd and 4th in the league in 3-point shooting, can't hit anything. Meanwhile, Miami somehow has found this ridiculous stretch. It just finally felt like life came back to earth last night. But it feels like, to me, I don't know, that we're a little, like, too positive right now, because, like, Boston's still down 3 games to 1 in this.
No, but I'll tell you why we're positive.
Go for it.
Like beyond even the whole, as a buddy texted me during game 4, during that 18-0 run, like, are we witnessing a regression to the mean right now? Like that was what it felt like. And obviously, Barrett alluded to that before, but I think we're feeling good because, well, one, you're coming back. I mean, you shouldn't feel great coming back home based on the way they played at the Garden, but generally speaking, you'd like to believe that at least with the crowd behind you and the elimination game and all that, you think back to Game 7 against Philly, sure, like maybe coming back home, that will actually be a good thing. Not that Miami is the most hostile environment, for a team to play in, but I think we're feeling good because, you were talking about the inefficiencies offensively shooting the ball for the Celtics in the first 3 games of the series, whether it was Tatum or obviously more so the likes of Brown and Horford and Smart and Brogdon. And it's not like they were missing all of these contested shots, and you got to give all this credit to Miami. They're finding a way to contain and shut down the C's and what they do best. No, they were just missing open looks. Open look after open look after open look. It wasn't a failure to create opportunities and ball movement, and you can't find a way to get off a clean shot. They were just missing great shots. Great shots. And eventually, if you're a great shooter or even a good shooter or above average shooter, those things are going to start to fall. And we saw that in game 4. And I do believe that we're going to see more of that in this series. Doesn't mean they're going to come all the way back and win. I'm not proclaiming that. But I do think you are going to see a more representative shooting performance in game 5. Maybe not quite what we saw in game 4. Not that game 4 was like out of this world. It wasn't, they didn't shoot over 50% from 3, but they shot very well. I don't think we're going to see what we saw in games 1 through 3. I really don't. And I would like to believe Jalen's going to start to shoot better. I'd really like to believe that Brogdon isn't going to look like a waste of space on both ends of the floor. And as far as, and I'm combining sort of everything we're talking about here, but on the Miami side of things with their offense, like, oh, you can't let Butler go off. Like, you kind of can, and not 40, 45 points, but you can let Butler get his 30. You can even let Bam get his 20. You got to control. You can't be torched by Vincent if he plays, Martin, Strus, Robinson. Like, the role players can't abuse you as what happened in the first 3 games and did not happen in game 4. That's the overwhelming difference right here for me. Butler can do his thing. I mean, hopefully he doesn't get the bulk of it in the fourth quarter, but generally speaking, over the course of a game, Butler can do his thing. It's the other guys that you got to tie up. And if you do that successfully, Brian, you win.
Yeah, and the thing to me about that is it's schematic too, right? Because, okay, if you don't want Butler to be singled up and you want to double him, you got to make sure you get back to the shooters now, because I understand like the gamble early in the series, right? When you're like, okay, there's no way Strus is going to hit all these threes, even though he's a good shooter. There's no way Martin or Vincent, they're going to hit all those threes. But what they've proven throughout the series is they're very capable of hitting those threes. All those guys have been really, really hot right now. So that's going to be the thing. Like, they just got to be more together when it comes to being on a string, which I think we saw more of that, of course, in that game 4, where they were getting out to the shooters more quickly. And the thing that sort of aggravated me about going back to earlier in the series is the doubles on Butler when they actually brought him, like at the end of the second quarter. And what was that, game 3? Like, Butler turned the ball over twice. And then they come out for the third quarter and they're not doubling him. And then they start doubling him, but it's after he gets 2 to 3 dribbles where he gets into the lane. Like, there just has to be, and you have to show him different looks because eventually he's got to figure you out. But there's got to be a consistent plan, because if he's getting 3 dribbles and he's going past the defender and then you double, he is going to find the shooter. This guy is a phenomenal passer. So on that end of the court, that would be the most important thing to me. And even going back to the whole idea of the Celtics were just missing shots, one of the other things I would say in last night's game, they actually generated better threes. They took 17 corner threes and they hit 7 of those. And if you go back to the regular season and the Heat coming into this series, they gave up the most corner threes per game in the entire NBA. So if you can get inside and penetrate, you're going to find better 3-point opportunities for, remember last year we said it was Grant's corner office? Like, you're going to find better shots for your guys, because the reality is this: if Tatum gets into the teeth of the defense, they're cheating. Now, Jalen, if he gets into the teeth of the defense, let's hope it's only 3 dribbles instead of 4 dribbles, because if he gets to 4, he's probably going to either dribble it off his foot or they're going to steal it from him. But if the reads are easy for Jalen, it's going to be more beneficial for this team. But the big thing to me is just, they got to be as consistent as they were with how they're handling Jimmy. And the one other thing is this, guys. When Jimmy Butler gets into the lane, he only jumps off 2 feet. He doesn't jump off 1 foot. He jump stops, he stops, he pump fakes. Don't go for the first pump fake. And I know it's easy for me to say this, like as we're talking, but don't go for the first pump fake. He's trying to get to the free throw line. Even last night where he couldn't shoot at all in that game, would he get to the free throw line 12 times? And a lot of times you can't go for the first shot fake. You cannot do that.
Don't even go for the
Makes
second.
sense. Hey, let's before we get too carried away talking about how the parade is coming to Boston, let's shout out our great sponsors who have us here twice a week, Ev.
Yeah, quick break to tell you today's show is powered by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs right now, because right now, new customers can have no sweat first bet up to $1,000 thanks to us here at CLNS Media. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. Head over to FanDuel right now. We're going to pull up. Again, look, I know the odds aren't like astronomical with some of these SGPs. I know Kaufman dabbles in the 20-leg, the same game parlay. We're going to make it
They're not smart bets, but they're fun. They're my giggles
fun.
parlays.
Look, I hit the SGP last night, guys. I hit my SGP last night.
There you go. We're going to try and do
324.
There you go. Those are great odds. These aren't even that great. I'm just throwing it out there. Again, I tried to build the game script. How do the Celtics win this game? So you take the Celtics money line, easy. If the C's win game 5, could it be another Jason Tatum game? Tatum to score 30 plus, 8 plus rebounds, 4 plus assists, plus 184. I know it's not great, but if Boston wins, it's probably because Tatum's awesome. Just going to point that out.
Why don't you parlay it with a Celtics win then, too?
That's what I got. The Celtics money line is baked in there.
Oh, all right. Well, then.
But the problem is you can't get any value on the money line anymore, as we talked about a bunch.
No, you definitely can't. But man, those 4 legs and you're still not even at plus 200.
It's ridiculous. You can't get any value in the C's money line, but you might as well take it, because I think the other way around, taking the spread at like what is it now? Let's look it up, because
you might need to get creative, like throw in like 3 made threes by Tatum or something like that. Like lift.
Why don't we do this? Because
throw Derrick White in there.
Yeah, we're gonna throw Derrick White in there. 3 plus made threes. Now we're cooking. Just adding in the Derrick White 3 plus made threes, as Barrett has pointed out, that has happened every game so far this series. Now we're at plus 556, boys.
Yeah, that's
bang.
That's a big number. I know he's done it every game. I know, but I think I'd be more comfortable with 2. I'm not banking on 3, but you know what? Hey, that's what the same game parlays are all about. So let's live a little.
Let's live a little bit, and let's do it with FanDuel. They have great promotions every single day. Their app is like the easiest thing in the world. I often talk about how I will, on the walk with my dog, forget that I haven't put my SGP in for the day, and I'm just very quickly throwing my phone up, done in like 15 seconds. It's awesome, and you get paid instantly. It's the easiest way to gamble on all your sports, and America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Visit mdgamblinghelp.com gamblinghelp.org in Maryland. There we go. 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369 New York. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia.
Excellent. Just in building off the whole Derrick White discussion, while you were reading through some of that, I was perusing Twitter. This is another one from StatMuse. Terrific account if you don't follow it. Derrick White this postseason. I want you guys to remember back to basically this time last year, maybe a couple weeks later, this time last year, and some people out there in the media or even fans lamenting the White trade and how could you give up a pick for this guy and all of that stuff. Derrick White this postseason, 12.6 points, a little dyslexic there, 12.6 points per game, obviously, 50.3 field goal percentage, 45.3 3-point percentage, 95.8 free throw percentage. The first player in NBA history with 200 plus points on a 50, 45, 95 percentage split in a playoff run.
My man.
Wow.
He's been pretty good.
Derrick White's awesome.
Brandon Bass never did it.
Can you believe it?
From the mid-range, about either elbow, Brandon Bass is about 95% from the field.
That's an amazing number. Like Kaufman, it's a great point because going back to last postseason, it wasn't even like at times where he was bricking everything. I think back to the Heat series, the only good game he had was game 6. Remember, that's the game where Butler went nuts at the Garden and Derrick White almost won the game single-handedly for the Celtics. You're waiting for the rest of the guys to get going in that game. And the weird thing about it was he was so bad in the previous games, and I understand he missed one of the games because of the birth of a child. And so it was either he was bricking threes or remember when he wouldn't take them and Pritchard was like playing the same amount of minutes of them. He just didn't have the confidence. And that's one guy where I really think that Joe Mazzulla has been better for Derrick White than Ime because Derrick White's confidence has never shattered this year, right? Where it's like, even if you look at the minutes in the Philly series where he lost some minutes, he still wasn't afraid to shoot. When he went in there, he still went in. And in that series, I believe he shot, 39% from 3-point territory. So even when he wasn't playing his best, like he was great in the first 2 games against Atlanta, and he was tremendous in game 4. And I think he's been good in this series in general. At least he still has the confidence because that was a real issue last year. He just wouldn't shoot. And that really sputtered the Celtics offense, right? Because then all the spacing gets screwed up if you're not willing to shoot. And he's been willing to shoot and give him credit. I mean, the guy shot nearly 40% on catch and shoot threes this year. He deserves a lot of credit for the improvement because it's obviously he put in a ton of work in the offseason.
I want to be clear. Hang on, I'm getting, if you're just listening, you're not watching, I'm getting closer to the camera with my ear. Did I hear some mixed in Joe Mazzulla praise in that comment? Is someone actually saying a good thing about Joe Mazzulla these days?
Well, for Derrick White specifically, I think he has been better. Don't you guys? I mean,
I do. I absolutely. The Joe Mazzulla criticism has been so. I'm not going to go into a whole monologue on this because I've done it on this show already. It's been so over the top, and I'm not saying he is infallible. There are plenty of eyebrow raising moments throughout this playoff run, the regular season, and all of it. But Joe Mazzulla, not just the players. Joe Mazzulla had himself a great game 4.
Yeah, he did. And the one thing I'll say is he called the timeout in the middle of a possession, which you're like, whoa, the possession's going nowhere. Joe called the timeout. My only real critique would be of him in game 4 is if at the beginning of the fourth quarter, first of all, I would just play Tatum the whole second half, okay? Because earlier this season, Tatum played the whole second quarter, whole third quarter, whole fourth quarter, whole overtime against the Warriors during the regular season and the Lakers during the regular season. And he's technically in his 24-year-old season, he's 25 years of age. LeBron almost played 48 minutes. So I believe that Tatum can go the distance. And we actually saw in game 4, it looked like he was mad at Mazzulla in the first quarter when he took him out. I don't know if you guys caught that. It looked like he was kind of upset with Mazzulla when it came to that. But if you are going to take out Tatum to begin the fourth quarter, what we've noticed in this series is every time Tatum's out of the game, the Heat go to zone. So if that's going to be the case, Smart and Al both have to be on the court. And look, it was great that they called the timeout early there. So it was only a 4-0 run for Miami to begin that fourth quarter before they put Tatum in. And then Tatum destroyed the zone because first play, and again, give Joe credit. He calls the ATO was, hey, Tatum, come up to the elbow. He hits a little jumper. He shoots him out of that zone, right? But if Tatum's going to be out of the game, Smart and Al have to be out there because those are your second and your third best passers, or wherever you want to cut. Those are your 3 best passers. And if Tatum's off the court, you have to have your other 2 best passers on the court against the zone because it's Jalen and Brogdon out there. Rob can do some things on the short roll, but Jalen and Brogdon, I mean, these guys have blinders on, okay? They cannot be like the guys out there. And Derrick White's fine, right? But I want Smart and Al out there if they go zone when Tatum's on the bench.
Yeah, I've been wondering why he's put a leash on Tatum and on Rob. Like there are certain games I'm like, I'm not quite sure why Rob's not playing more because unless Al's going to hit shots, and Al finally hit some shots in Game 4, there are just plays where you're like, Al can't hang out here right now. Like he just doesn't like. You're asking a lot of a guy of that age, that many minutes, and I know everybody's afraid to play Rob more minutes, but at some point, like Rob's got to play more minutes. Like you're either you play Rob some more minutes sometimes or your season's over, and it's the same thing with Tatum, and it's more like pressing with Tatum. Again, if they're down in Game 5 at halftime, I'm not taking Tatum out the entire second half. I'm just not because, and this has been their problem throughout the entire season. This was one of the biggest questions that I had for Missoula and this staff and this team from the second half on, because of the first half and a lot of the season, the team would crater with Tatum off the floor. I mean, the non-Tatum minutes were a joke. It was like, what is happening to this team? It's like, it's not quite Jokic level, but it was getting there. I wouldn't even play this game. I would just have Tatum out there the entire time because how do we solve the non-Tatum minutes has been so inconsistent that at this point, like you just can't have non-Tatum minutes there.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because even if you look at the playoff numbers in totality, and it's worse in this series, the Celtics have actually been outscored when Jalen's on the court without Tatum. That's been one of the remarkable things is Jalen, the impact metrics, they never really have liked Jalen because he's always been like a 1 assist to 1 turnover guy. So he's never going to pile up a lot of assists and he's not the rebounder like Tatum is. I mean, Tatum's averaging north of 10 rebounds per game in this postseason, which it's one of the most underrated parts of his game. The guy's a phenomenal rebounder. I mean, Kawhi and Durant have never averaged 10 rebounds per game in a playoff run. Tatum is now doing it for the second time. The first time he did it, he was still in his embryonic stages as an NBA basketball player. It was in the bubble. What was he like? Literally, I think he was 22. Like that was his 22 or 21-year-old season. But Jalen's never going to be loved by the impact metrics, but it's noticeable in this series that Jalen's just not the same player right now. And hopefully they can get him back on track. But to your point about Tatum, you think about it, that Game 4, he doesn't play for 6 minutes. The Celtics go 2 of 8, 0 of 5 from 3. In the 42 minutes he played, they were plus 21. They shoot 53.9%, 45% from deep, and they had a 128.9 offensive rating with off the court. And look, it's just 6 minutes, but they had a 69.2 offensive rating. So yeah, the non-Tatum minutes have been, and I thought they were better at least during the regular season with that. Maybe it's just because they have such a deep team, but it does feel like at times they get exposed when Tatum's not in the court. That's why I would always have Smart out there if Tatum's not out there, because you need that additional playmaker without Tatum on the court. So that's the one perplexing thing I've seen is not having Smart out there. But I don't know, guys, how concerned are you about Jalen? Because this is now.
Well, I just wanted to ask you about that. Are we worried about an injury? Because this is, you use the words like get Jalen back on track. I'm wondering, can you get Jalen back on track? Like, is this a slump, a prolonged slump? Or if you look at those, like, it's easy to pinpoint these in particular, but those 2 free throws that he missed, one which barely grazed the rim, he just doesn't look right. I mean, he looks hurt. And obviously, I wouldn't expect him to come out and talk about it and acknowledge it and use it as an excuse or anything like that. But he does not look right now. And so at a certain point in time, you got to sit him, if that continues, if that's prolonged, kind of like how Brogdon looked like crap in Game 4 and played by his standard limited minutes. I know Brown this year was a top 10 player in the NBA, second team all NBA and all of that. But if he's not that guy, maybe you got to put him down.
Yeah, and if you look to that second quarter, another thing I'll give Joe Mazzulla credit for is he didn't bring Jalen back in until there was about 5 minutes and 15 seconds left before half. So Jalen sat more than 6 minutes in that second quarter break where he played the entirety of the first quarter. He didn't come back in for a while. And it did feel like they found something with Grant on the court at the 4, and they had Rob at one point, and then Al was in there, but you had Tatum with the 2 guards around him, right? At one point, it was Derrick White, and it was Malcolm Brogdon, and it was Marcus Smart mixed in there as well before Jaylen Brown came back in. And it just felt like the best players right now, or at least in that game, I would include Al, but the best players right now for the Celtics, it feels like, are Tatum, Grant, and Derrick White. And when those guys are on the court together, I'm not saying they're the best, obviously, on the team. I'm just saying as of right now, they're playing the best. Sure. They play faster, right? And I do feel like one of the issues that Jalen has had throughout his career is he tends to play slower for like his decision making. I'm not talking about his speed end to end, but his decision making seems to be slower than some of these other guys. Like Grant is either going to shoot it or he's going to take one dribble and try to drive a closeout, or he's passing it. Derrick White is either going to drive to the basket, he's going to pass it, or he's going to shoot it. And I do feel like at times Jaylen Brown holds onto the ball and it kind of slows down the offense in totality. But the fact that he's now at the 3 games, less than 20 points, and the free throw shooting in the series, you mentioned it, Cuff, he's 4 of 9. He has 67 points. 67 points in the series. Butler, Martin, and Vincent all ahead of him as it pertains to his points, and he's taken 77 shots, the same as Tatum. I have to think that there's something wrong with him. You don't go from being a really good shot maker, and he shot the ball exceptionally well against Atlanta, pretty well against Philly, not as good, but there has to be something going on with the wrist. Like he should be like, it's not like he's taking all these difficult shots. He's bricking like easy opportunities that he would ordinarily hit. The one thing he did yesterday, I give him credit. They got him going by getting him out running in transition. But right now it's like Jaylen can't hit anything outside of the restricted area.
Yeah. That game too in particular, and I was in the building for it, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. He was so bad. I mean, there were a lot of reasons they lost that game, but for me, and we won't rehash all this obviously, but he was number one. You know, if he has an even average night for him, a representative Jaylen Brown night, they win that game going away. And they lost it because all these wide open looks, like we talked about, he couldn't hit anything. And that was where I started to get a little concerned that, man, it just seems like something is up with him. And you don't want to, again, if the Celtics lose the series, they lose the series. There are no excuses. They are the healthier team in this series, independent of Jaylen Brown, but he doesn't look right. And, you know, I don't know. Brogdon, on the other hand, just looks bad. Like, he doesn't look hurt. He looks bad. You know, Smart to some degree looks a little banged up. Jaylen does not look right.
Yeah, Brogdon to me looks gassed. That's what it looks like to me with Brogdon. And look, part of it, maybe this is the situation with Brogdon where he's 12 of 34, 35.3%. He's 3 of 14 from deep, 21.4%. And right now, I don't feel like any of them are going in, right? Because and I know he has like kind of a line drive type shot, but they're all coming up short. So I do wonder with Brogdon, who, going back to when they made the trade, unbelievable trade where basically all you gave up was Aaron Nesmith and a draft pick, right? You do that again. Yeah. He won 6th man of the year and all this, but we all knew like the price was that because of the injury history. Mm-hmm. And during the regular season, they did a really good job of sort of keeping Brogdon's minutes down, right? Where he was always coming off the bench. In fact, at times I thought, hey, maybe he should be playing more. Maybe he should be in the game at the end of this one because he was playing well. But I do wonder, like we talk about Al all the time with his minutes, but a guy that has had this injury history playing every other day, I do wonder if Brogdon is starting to get fatigued because all these other guys on the Celtics, Tatum, Jaylen, Marcus, even Derrick White to a lesser extent last year, these guys are used to it. These guys have played a ton of minutes in the postseason. Malcolm Brogdon really hasn't. So I do wonder if there is, and I'm not saying this as like defending Malcolm Brogdon, but fatigue is a factor. We saw that in the finals last year with the Celtics when they played all of these games. And I know they were dealing with injuries, but Tatum was completely gassed by the end. I wouldn't be surprised if Brogdon is just tired.
I just looked it up while you're talking. He has played more games this year, playoffs included, than any other season of his career. By a lot.
Yeah, that's not
by a lot. Yeah, seriously, he's, you know, first of all, the 67, because when they made the trade, remember all the questions were like, you know, this is going to be defined as a great trade or a bad trade, just purely like, you know, how he's going to play. It is purely going to be defined by the number of games that he plays, because in recent years, 36 last year for Indiana, 56 the year before that, 54 in his first year with the Pacers, this 67 that he played this year, and that's just regular season, 67 that he played this year were the most since 75 as a rookie. He had never hit this number before, and now this is about to be playoff game number 18. So, I mean, the guy that he's not used to this kind of workload. And I realize the minutes are not maybe what they have been in more recent years when he was a 20 point a game guy with the Pacers, but still, I mean, just in terms of like mileage on those legs over the course of, you know, he's playing an extra, he'd never gone on a playoff run like this, period. I mean, his He had never played more than 7 playoff games in a season. And like I said, he's about to be at 18. He has played weeks, if not months longer than he is used to.
Think about that last series too with the Sixers when it really got tight in Game 6 and Game 7. Joe tightened it up to 7 guys and rode Brogdon way more than White.
Yep.
So it's not like one of these things. I mean, look, at one point I agree. I disagree with you. It's like, man, they really did a great job of managing his minutes throughout the regular season. There were times I'm sure all of us were like, why doesn't Brogdon play more? This is crazy. He's clearly like the one thing with the 6 minutes.
I don't know. I remember screaming a lot. Why isn't White out there?
Well, no, I mean, one of the things.
Sure.
Like
Derrick White
too. The people that were all on the Emmanuel Quickly train for 6 man a year were like, well, he plays more. And it was like, well, if Brogdon played more, they would obviously have better numbers. And at some points I was, screaming for Brogdon to play more. If you go back to that Philadelphia series when they got tight, Joe only went 7 guys. And it wasn't a lot of Derrick White, it was mostly Brogdon. So there maybe is a point about that. And I'm just hopeful it's not, because I'm hopeful that the Celtics can again find a way to get 2 of the best 4 3-point shooters in the league this year to like kind of get back on track. I don't know. I feel like I'm asking a lot here, but again, I do want to go back to one thing quick. Well, I mean, with the whole Jalen thing, right? Maybe again, the move is to try and find more advantageous lineups when Jalen's off the floor. If you go back to earlier in this year when the Celtics are really shooting the ball well, the best lineups were with Jalen off the floor. Like Sam Hauser was second in the league and like plus minus for a while because the lineups that he played with it was like Tatum and like 4 guys. Pick any 4 guys. It was Tatum and 4 guys. That lineup was like ridiculous. And again, maybe that's how they find oil. And like, but the question is, can you really bench Jaylen Brown when everything's on the line? I don't know if I have the well,
and that goes back to a fair Joe critique, which is why just during this playoff run in general, I'm not even specifically talking about this series, although really I could. Why have we not seen any Hauser? Why have we not seen a little bit more Pritchard? That like this is a whole longer conversation that we won't have right now. But it takes me. I can't. How many times on this show, Evan, over the course of the year or even last offseason, did we say to ourselves, man? Or to our audience, one thing the Celtics were painfully missing in that Golden State series in particular last year was a Sam Hauser type. It wasn't specifically Hauser, and I know we thought like maybe Danilo Gallinari will be that guy when they signed him, but then once Hauser got off to that absurd start to the regular season, it was this is what you were missing in that series last year. You play him a great regular season this year within his role, like Brad Stevens, be a star in your role. You let him have a great year based on expectation, and he will be ready this time around, whereas last year he wasn't. This time around, he will be ready when called upon to perform and be that potential bucket, microwave, whatever off the bench. And all of a sudden, playoffs come, rotations tighten. I know that's customary, but glued to the bench. Even when all you needed was to try and shoot yourself back into a game, Sam Hauser was nowhere to be found. And that is certainly a very fair critique of among many of Joe Mazzulla, throughout this playoff run. I don't know how, even earlier on in this series specifically, when it was like, man, you got all these guys who are good shooters that can't hit the broadside of a barn while wide open. Give Hauser a look. Like, Duncan Robinson's out there torching you, not because he's a good defender. He's out there because he can knock down a 3. Sam Hauser, not the best defender, but man, if he could start to rain some 3-pointers, but like, so that's, but now Game 5, like I'd be shocked. I mean, hopefully there won't even be a need, but you're not going to see Sam Hauser coming in to try and save the day.
Well, 2 things. First of all, Kaufman, I can't play. I totally forgot about Gallo. I mean, he would be so pivotal for this team right now, just to have that as an option, right? Where we know he can like barrel his way to the basket and he can shoot like that. That's a great option that they don't have. I always see him on the bench, but I totally forget him like as he was supposed to be on the team this year. I always forget that because he tore his. I think I did a podcast with you guys too, like right after that, where it's like, oh, they dodged a bullet. Gallo, he hurt the knee, but it's not torn. This is right. Great. And then we found out, oh no, it actually is torn. He's going to miss the entire season, which stunk.
But the Hauser was really strong at that time.
Yeah, the Hauser point's a really good one because remember in the Atlanta series, Grant was pinned to the bench, and he's like at the beginning of the series, Hauser was in the rotation, and we really haven't seen him since then. And it didn't, to me, like the explanation for playing, I would have played Grant in game one. I think that Grant is a much better player than the coaching staff does. And that's where I stand on the Grant thing. I've never understood, and I know that he was dealing with an elbow issue, whatever it was during the season. I've never understood the Grant thing this year, where Grant was DNP during the rate. Like, I don't understand this. Like, think about what think about what Phoenix would do to have a role player like Grant Williams right now. Like they would have died. Grant would have been like their fourth best player on their team. I mean, it's maybe even higher than that based on the way that Ayton played in the postseason, right? So I never understood that. But in the first game, like the explanation for going with Pritchard was Joe referenced that they liked his shooting and they liked his pick and roll defense. I didn't understand the pick and roll defense part of the equation. I mean, the Heat are going to run pick and roll with Jimmy Butler. So I don't understand that explanation. But to your point, Kaufman, this team has been struggling so much, or they were in the first 3 games shooting the 3, and the Heat were playing a ton of zone. So Hauser, that would have been like sort of a zone breaker. How many times did, when we were in college, watch some random dude come off the bench against Syracuse and start burying threes against the zone from like way behind the 3-point line? Like, that's a great point. Why didn't they try out Hauser earlier in the series? And look, now you're right. Like, they're not going to try it now, and I totally understand why. But I am kind of surprised that Hauser hasn't gotten more minutes, because one of the critiques that you could have had for Ime is like they didn't trust his defense last year. That's why they didn't play him. But at times last year, they ran through this problem where they weren't hitting threes, and you found out, oh, hey, this isn't going to happen this year because you can play the Hauser guy in the playoffs. And now we haven't really seen Hauser since the Atlanta series, at least an extended amount of time. So that is shocking. That's a great point. That where has Hauser been? Pritchard got minutes in game one. Where was Hauser?
Right. I don't. And to your point, and this is now I'm going to get upset and start to pile on Joe when I didn't even want, I'm usually the one defending Joe.
Yeah,
but
Kaufman hates Missoula.
The Grant DNP CD in game one, or even the limited amount that he played against Philly when he was one of the only guys that was slowing down Embiid, it seems personal. Like the Grant thing seems personal, which is why I always expected him to be back next year. And he'll probably just, because business, he'll get the qualifying offer. But so long as Missoula's the coach, and maybe he won't be, but so long as Missoula's the head coach of this team, I don't think Grant is back, because I just don't think he likes him.
It doesn't make any sense either, because he's the only guy that plays with energy a lot of the time. It's like in some of these games against Miami, and people wanted to blame Grant for the game 2 loss for getting in Jimmy's face, and I just thought that was the weirdest take.
So stupid.
I mean, what is he supposed to do if Jimmy's in his face talking trash to him? What is he supposed to do? Just sit there and let Jimmy talk shit to him the entire time?
Right.
I would want the guy to get back in his face too. Grant, yeah, he had a 3. It was a big 3. Like, have some emotion. Like, play with that. Grant's one of the few guys that does, and I know it makes people mad that he talks a ton. And for me, I'd rather just have a guy that I know is going to be up for big games, and not when I have to wake up out of a coma. So
no, but what you're talking about isn't even the important part of it. Like, people getting all frustrated about why is Grant being who cares that Grant got in Jimmy Butler's face, and that it shouldn't, if Tatum does that, Brown does that, or even Smart does that, sure, that's a different story. But if you're know your role, dude, Grant Williams, you don't do that. That none of that matters. None of that matters. This is about who Jimmy Butler is, and Jimmy Butler doesn't need that to wake him up. Jimmy Butler is awake. Always. Jimmy Butler doesn't need to be motivated. Jimmy Butler's a bulldog. So I just think it's such a lame, lazy take by anybody, media fan, anyone who's man, Grant really, you probably would have won game 2 if Grant didn't wake up Jimmy Butler.
Dumbest take.
He didn't. He didn't.
No, that'd be hey, if Richard Sherman didn't talk crap to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, the Patriots wouldn't have won. Hey, Richard, if you didn't say that to Tom, you guys would have won the Super Bowl. Come on, that's ridiculous.
Also, they wouldn't have won if Malcolm Butler didn't catch that ball.
That's very true as well. But this is one of the most competitive guys in the NBA. So I'm with you, Valenti. I'm with you, Kaufman. There's no reason that people should have been upset by that. By the way, you see the 180 that Reggie pulled on that? In game 2, he was yelling that it was stupid by Grant that he poked the bear. And then in game 3, he was defending him, saying that guys should have stuck up for him. And he liked that he did. I mean, Reggie has just been as bad as the Celtics were in the first 3 games. Reggie matched it. I mean, he was as bad as the Celtics.
How did he end up with Reggie Miller with Kevin Harlan? I don't understand it at all. How they don't have one guy better than that? Isn't there somebody with Ian Eagle that's better? I don't know. I just don't get it.
And I know people love Breen, and they should. Breen's great. He's a Hall of Famer, all of it. But man, like Kevin Harlan really is like an Ian Eagle, like incredible Syracuse. Like there are a lot of very good, like elite broadcasters, especially this time of year. But Kevin Harlan, I don't know, maybe it's the video games or I don't know what it is, but Kevin Harlan is the voice of playoff basketball for me. Like I get ratcheted up another level when Kevin Harlan is calling the game.
It's not Marv Albert for you?
Well, I mean now, like obviously when I was a kid, it was Marv, but Marv is, long out of the game.
Yeah, that trio, we really are spoiled as NBA fans that you have Breen, Ian Eagle, and Kevin Harlan, and all calling like important playoff games. Obviously, Eagle's not calling playoff games anymore because Harlan has the TNT thing, but I like all three of those guys are awesome. And for Reggie Miller to be on the I don't know how Turner can think that
he's a name. He's a name.
Yeah. I mean, some of the points that this guy makes are like, it's almost like, Reggie, are you watching the game? Like, for example, in game 4, Tatum comes out of halftime, and we all know he had the 14-point third quarter, and he's going nuts right away. Like, they got going in that third quarter. Tatum hit back-to-back wing threes. That's when they really started to get going, like get into rhythm. And then he destroyed the defense because they started doubling him. He's finding open shooters. But after the Heat call a timeout, he hit the 2 threes. Reggie said this is reminiscent of game 6 against Philadelphia, where Tatum didn't do anything until the final 3 minutes of the game. Like, Reggie, we still have more than a quarter and a half to play. This isn't similar at all. It's not similar to that at all. I don't understand. I don't understand the comparison. I really don't. The guy is asleep at the wheel.
So let's wrap with this because we've been going over an hour. There's and for I'm not just saying this like for any I've done many an interview between games 3 and 4, radio, podcast, whatever. And I said this consistently through, and I truly believed it. And I continue to believe it. I want to know what you guys think. And this is not a time for hot takes. I want genuine feelings about, where we are at right now going into game 5. What I have said is if they win game 4, which obviously they did, but I said this prior to the game. If they win game 4, I firmly believe we will see a game 6. I believe Boston will win game 5. I don't know what the heck will happen in game 6. So I'm not like proclaiming Boston's going to come all the way back and actually do this. But I do believe, despite the whole they could win by 20, lose by 20, we don't know who these guys are. I get it. I believe they will win game 5. And then at that point in time, the question is, do they keep the foot on the gas, or do they get too comfortable within themselves, like we've seen many times before? But Barrett, we'll start with you, obviously. Where are you at with this team?
Well, I said last night on my podcast, and it was late, so maybe I was a little high on the victory, and I had just pounded an energy drink. So, I'm going through all the ideas here. Yeah, all the emotions of it. But I think it's going 7 now, because I think finally this whole thing of, hey, they're below 500 at the Garden, it's a real thing, but they're facing elimination. They've been really good when it comes to that. I do think that the crowd's going to fire them up, and they're actually going to respond. So I do believe they win this one, because I think this is a difficult one for the Heat, especially with this Vincent situation, where actually one of the only good points Reggie Miller made is it's going to be worse flying to Boston. It's going to be worse for him in this game than it was to finish off that game, because you're going on adrenaline. So I think they win game 5 at home. And I really think then if you win game 5, now it's really weird, right? Because the Celtics are the heavy favorites, like coming into the series. The Heat are the massive underdogs. The Heat act like they've never been underdogs, and the Celtics, they don't want to be the favorites, right? Like they like this underdog persona, so to speak. Then I think it flips to the pressures on the Heat. So I think this is going 7.
Yeah, Evan? I think if it goes back to Miami, it goes 7, but I don't think it's going. I think it's over tomorrow.
Oh.
Hey, listen, I asked for honesty.
I'll tell you, I've been really impressed with Miami. I think a lot of people, and I don't know how to even really explain what this Miami team is, because like one of the things that irritates me about this, again, it's the TNT broadcast, I love to talk about how many points the undrafted players have scored. Like, okay, they were undrafted like the first year they played in the league, and then after that, like they're rotation players now. So like the Max Strus and Duncan Robinson and Gabe Vincent and all these guys are good basketball players, okay? Mm-hmm. Like they're really good. And the role players for Miami have been absolutely nails this entire postseason, but especially in this series. And Jimmy's going to get to his numbers. Bam Bam's been mostly good, but it's these role players that have been really killer for Miami. And I think they had their off game, and because they're not afraid to take like tough shots. A lot of the tough ones go in. The open ones certainly go in. They just have a great rhythm right now. And I think Boston, look, they're great in elimination games. They're 3-0 so far. We'll see how it goes. But I think this Miami team is a little tougher mentally than Philadelphia and than Atlanta. Just gonna throw it out there.
I agree on that.
The
Bam thing's weird. The Bam thing's weird, guys, right? Because if you go back to last year's 4 games, he only took 6 shots. In the other games that he took more than 6 shots, he was really good. And then last night, it was kind of like Bam had one of those games where he only took 7 shots. I was really confused by that. But I really can't have Adrian Brody / Pat Riley get the trophy, right? And the Larry Bird trophies given away to Jimmy Butler at the Garden. I won't be able to watch it. I'll turn it right off. I will not stomach that.
Yeah.
Not to end on a somber note, but I think these two teams are just fighting for the opportunity to lose to Denver anyway.
That is a machine.
I mean, Jokic, again, the people that haven't watched Jokic before who are now watching Jokic are like, holy cow, this guy's awesome. It's like, I was very, as Kaufman, I was very against that. We have to give Embiid the MVP trophy this year because Jokic hasn't won the title yet. And I'm like, this is crazy. If you take, because that's just the stupid storyline. If you just put the numbers next to each other of what these guys do, and then you looked at the teams around them, what Jokic does is like kind of LeBron-ish, where he just makes everybody better. Like everybody on the Nuggets is a better player because Jokic is on their team. And as cool as Embiid is, I don't say that about Embiid. I just don't. He's an awesome defensive player. He is a remarkable scorer. But I don't think his team is better because he's like the double team stuff. He can't pass out of doubles. He's not. The vision is not even close. Jokic is like one of the most special players I've seen in my lifetime. And
you know what else is the biggest difference between him and Embiid, him and LeBron, him and maybe Tatum as well, and so many other stars and superstars in this league? Jokic doesn't want any of the credit. He doesn't want any of it. It's the best. I mean, it's just like after a game, he's shouting out like Jamal Murray. It doesn't matter how poorly Murray or whoever played. It's he's the engine that drives us and all. I love him. He is absolutely one of my favorites in the league.
Yeah, and he was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. Like
it's getting a lot of run lately. Yeah,
yeah, it's gonna be. They're gonna talk about it a lot during the finals. The other difference between him and Embiid is, why is Embiid always on the floor? You notice that? Like, I've never seen a guy fall as much as Embiid does. He's always on the floor. I don't understand. He's so clumsy.
The explanation.
That's a good point. I think he did. I think he is a soccer
taught him
guy.
how to fall to like save himself, because like somebody explained it of like somebody's teaching him to fall when he feels contact, so like he can brace himself for the fall instead of falling. Like there are certain ways to fall successfully, right? When you like. If the way you do it is you tuck your chin, like kind of like.
Have you been talking to Marcus Smart? Where's this coming from?
No, this is actually more of Joe Mazzulla's alley with the jiu-jitsu stuff. They teach you this in jiu-jitsu when
that's true.
Like, to learn you have to learn how to fall correctly, right? So like you tuck your chin into to protect the back of your head, so you don't slam the back of your head when your back falls. So you actually cradle your body so that your back kind of creates an arch, so that you all don't hit the one time. You kind of like flow into it a little bit. You're supposed to use your arms as ways to stop your momentum. Now, Embiid doesn't like do a lot of that sometimes, but I do think he does fall purposefully for like his own body's sake, to protect him from different injuries. The problem is, as Barrett has alluded to, and everybody, he's on the ground so much. I do think he injures himself that way too. So it's just I don't know what to do with Embiid. I have no clue. He's hilarious. He's cool. But like, if anybody watched this year and walked away like, oh yeah, Embiid's more valuable than Jokic, then you're not watching the same basketball teams.
Yeah, and he's stepping on dudes' domes. Like he's stepping on people's heads.
I couldn't believe Grant like actually walked up off after, like, just basically got curb stomped by a 300-pound like.
Just a monster of a human being.
I would have retired from podcasting if that happened to me.
Don't ever question Grant's toughness. That guy's tough as hell.
I can't believe he didn't lose teeth. But all right, we've gone on far too long because we're way too excited and we're trying to put off the inevitable potential disappointments. So let's just, I have an idea, Celtics. Just win again. Just keep winning, and we can keep doing this and celebrating you. That's what we want. So for Evan Valenti, for Brian Barrett, I am Adam Kaufman. Thanks for being with us, watching, listening, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you find it. Obviously, we thank you. We'll be back at you again over the weekend when hopefully Caesar's still at it. We'll see you.
CLNS Media's Celtics coverage is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.